Caroline, welcome to the Power Within You podcast. It's so wonderful to have you here today. And I was super excited to speak to you about your experience and your journey. But I appreciate you being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me. I always love the opportunity of talking about diverse mental health and kind of spreading the word. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so important, isn't it? We were just talking about that, how we are not really talking about it as much. The stigma is being broken, but still there's a lot to kind of discuss. And I think where I'd like to kind of start off is, I'd love to understand your journey into this area. Like, what brought you to kind of be interested in mental health and psychology and so forth?
You may regret asking me that because I had 30 years of experience. It's like, where do I start?
Where do you start? Start, middle, end.
I'll keep it as short as possible because I think that, my journey started from early childhood. I've always had this fascination with the human dilemma, the human spirit. So I remember as a very young child, even when I went out with my mum shopping, I would recognise and pinpoint people in the street, and I would want to go up to a person who was talking to themselves and find out what was going on, or I'd want to go up to find out about somebody who sleeps on the street, or someone who might be really intoxicated and been drinking, because I had this real drive to try to understand who we are and how we exist.
Yes.
And so, of course, it was a natural progression for me to go into psychology. And after leaving school, I had the opportunity to study A-level psychology. So I was 18 then. And then I went on to university. I studied psychology. I went on to college. I studied existential psychotherapy. I studied mindfulness coaching, lifelong learning journey.
Amazing.
But one of the things that really stands out for me is that I'm a twin. I'm an identical twin.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I love that. Wow. Yeah. Fascinating.
Because that connection between twins is a real, I think it's the deepest part of empathy that you can get between one individual to another. And that's about understanding somebody's experience and connecting with others. And along your journey, sharing, because my sister and I, we shared everything. And also when you're going through difficult times, to have somebody by your side.
Yes.
And that's all about the therapeutic experience, isn't it? And about us being human.
Relating to your family, I think, is a beautiful thing, having that empathy for your sister. And so tell me, because being a twin, you hear about the connection that you have. What makes it so special, especially between identical twins? Is it almost like telepathy, or knowing each other's thoughts, or understanding each other's body language? And
I think it's very much, there's a lot of myths around being twins as well, about being able to read each other's minds. But it's really about being so in tune with someone, because you've shared life experience from birth, then you're going to think and see things in very similar ways.
Absolutely.
And so it will be that you could have a conversation with me, and then you'd have exactly the same conversation with my sister. Exactly the same. Could be almost word for word.
I'm going to call her afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you talk about? That's the same person. And it really is about, because we have exactly the same dreams as well. I would dream something, and I'd tell her, I had exactly the same dream. But it's about that being in tune with someone and having that understanding. And when somebody experiences something, if my sister was hurt, I felt her pain. But as humans, that's not just about twins. We do that as human beings, because we have mirror neurons in our brains that trigger our empathy for others.
Absolutely. In the simplest form, I can kind of, when you sort of see someone get hurt, physically hurt, you can almost feel it yourself. You sort of recoil, because you can feel that person's pain almost, even though it has happened to you. But I think that empathy is, I think we lack empathy, don't we? In generally in life, we don't know how to be able to be empathic to people. Some of us are naturally empathic, but some of us need to quite learn it. But it's so powerful, isn't it? If you can be empathic to another human being.
It is. And I think it's becoming a greater part of our humanity, because I think, as you said, I think people are losing their empathy because of the kind of world we live in, and they become more insulated and egocentric, because they feel that they have to protect themselves or preserve their own interests, and they become numb to the horrors that we're faced in the world. And it's also perhaps part of our protective instincts. But that leaves us less compassionate. That leaves us separating ourselves and going into divisions and polarizing, rather than what we should be doing is coming together in general understanding and support.
Absolutely. And it feels like that was innately in you for since you were a child.
Yeah.
To be curious and understanding of other people's pain, which I think is, quite unusual. And, it obviously has led you to your A-level, to do your degree, to do further training. It's quite incredible that you're still on that same path now as well. How have you developed how have you developed your knowledge? Like, what was the things that interested you the most in mental health and well-being?
I think the things that really struck me was about what we struggle with in our lives, that drag us down, that make us inhuman towards each other, that make us also suffer emotional pain and depression and anxiety. What are the things in our lives that cause that for us? And that's not just about our surroundings. There are lots of things involved in that. There's the biological, there's the hormonal, there's the social, there's the financial. There are lots of components to that. And it's really important that we take a holistic approach to understanding our own identity, our own experience, what impacts our mental health. And mental health has always played the poorer cousin of physical health. It's all about investing in physical health, making sure we're physically fit, eating healthily, exercising, and also protection in the workplace for physical health. But we can't function without our mental health and healthy minds.
Indeed.
And so my fascination and my focus was on understanding that experience, saying that our mental health is just as important as our physical health, but also making that a reality in how we perceive it and investing it and actually promote our mental health.
I mean, ain't that the truth, right? Like, it's so right. Like, we focus so much on the physical. And, there's more and more research, more studies being done with, showing how your emotional pain, can affect your physical health as well. So, Gabor Mate is one of the authors that I've been reading recently about, the way that a child's been raised and not being able to connect with your emotions as well. Like, and really that emotions are your North Star, but we don't really connect with our emotions, do we? Especially in different cultures, which can cause that anxiety and stress as well.
Yeah.
Do you think emotions are underplayed generally? We don't really learn about them, do we?
I know. I think it's something that we do need to invest more in from a very early age. And we're hearing a lot more about emotional intelligence now, aren't we, rather than the other forms of intelligence. And you're definitely right that there are some aspects where we are socialized to suppress our emotions and our human vulnerability, particularly in certain cultures that have very strong stigma on mental health and well-being, and also for men as well, who are very socialized to be tough and to man up and not to show their natural human vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And so we really need to work on that. And it's not enough to say, let's talk about your mental health and share it. People think,
exactly.
Let's share it. And we're smashed the stigma. It takes more than that, because it's something that has been ingrained from birth. Yeah, exactly.
It's deep work to be able to do that. I was actually talking to a friend the other day. We live in the countryside, and I don't know why we do this. We are proper countryside now. We had a torch, we had the dog. We're walking through the mud and in the Chiltern Hills, and it's really dark. And we're talking about mental health, as you do, in the middle of the night.
Yeah, general conversation, which it should be. It should be.
And I was saying to her that, we're seeing more of it as I'm getting in my sort of late 40s, and I'm seeing my generation or my age group finding it tougher and tougher to deal with their mental health. And I was saying to her that I think that if you don't manage it, it gets worse as you get older. Yeah. It doesn't get better, right? I don't know. It feels like it weighs on you more. Almost. Life weighs on you more.
Yeah,
I don't know if you feel the same way, but like,
yeah,
we've seen that.
because
Yeah,
that accumulation, it builds up.
exactly.
And if you're not dealing with it, then you hold on to it, and it becomes, you hold on to it physically as well as psychologically and emotionally, and it will seep out in certain ways in your attitude, in your behaviour, in your feelings, and you become anxious, become depressed, you become irritable, you become angry, you become isolated, reserved. It will show itself in different ways, because as humans, we have to acknowledge and face our emotional reality and the difficulties that we have, and proactively and positively find ways to deal with that. And it's only through that process can we be fully healthy human beings.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Obviously many years ago, and I don't know if today, but we had these mental institutions, institutions where people were put into these places to get treated. And I just can't believe, I mean, lots of them have been shut down now, of course. But, like my parents' generation, for example, who are in their 80s, they never recognise, it's from being from Indian culture as well, especially, they would be called pagal. And pagal is a Hindi word for mad, basically.
Right.
So that was just pagal. They're my bipolar, it's just pagal, it was one of those, it's just classed as something else that you just put aside and go, all right, let's just ignore that, what kind of issues are you seeing, do you feel, in diverse communities that are quite prevalent at the moment?
Yeah, that's also a really big question as well, because my focus is on what I term diverse mental health. So that really relates to the detrimental factors related to diversity, inequity, exclusion and injustice, and how that impacts our mental health. And so it's clear that in our society that women, black people, brown, LGBT community, neurodiverse people with disabilities, older people experience harm. They speak harm. That is the reality of the society that we live in. Abuse, discrimination, violence, hate. And this has an impact on our mental health, and it can be traumatic. And we have to address those issues in order to be fully healthy. You cannot have fully healthy human beings if you're not addressing their lived experience. And so my focus is very much about helping people understand how that develops in our society, what the dynamics are, how it's perpetrated, and then how we can transform it, how we can develop healthy cultures. And it does mean transforming the status quo. It is a radical approach that people will resist, like they resist DEI. And in really
still do.
Yeah.
Still do. When budgets get cut for DEI, don't they? Generally, because it's seen as a tick box service rather than anything else, which makes me incredibly angry still to see that's happening. Because and what I love is that you're going even deeper into that, though. Regardless of that, you're still going deeper into the work of, mental health in diversity as well. I love to, if it's not a particular real life case, but like maybe an example of what that journey would look like for someone, like how would you help? So if they suffered from trauma or some sort of discrimination, what will they be suffering from, and how could you help someone in that instance as well?
Yeah. Well, you could have somebody, for example, who is a black woman in her early 50s who has a disability. So you're looking at the intersectionality of what that means for a black woman with that part of her identity. And so she'll be up against challenges such as sexism, racism, inequality, and also that she would have physical barriers because of a physical disability. So that might leave her isolated, secluded, and that will have an impact on her identity and her mental health, because that causes extreme stress, and that would be throughout her life. And so we know that when people experience extreme stress, ongoing stress, it can then result in mental health difficulties such as anxiety, depression, and also low self-esteem, and really having very difficult feelings of irritability, and can manifest physically as well, with greater blood pressure, heart problems, and conditions such as those. So it's really important to recognise that somebody's lived experience and the environment which they live in has a direct impact on their mental health and well-being. And so for me as a psychotherapist and coach, it's not enough just to see somebody in therapy or coaching and address those issues, and to help somebody understand what those issues are about, what it means, how it impacts them, how they're reacting to it, what the circumstances are, and then send them back into the same environment.
Yes.
So it's not just about, talk about resilience, make somebody stronger so they can go back and they can keep on fighting. That for me is not healthy. So
it's relentless.
It involves working with an individual to say, is this environment that you can work in? Can you change the circumstances and the environment? If not, what could be a different journey for you? And then working with organisations. So I do a lot of work with organisations. It's about how do you change your
culture,
your culture.
Yes, yes.
So that you produce healthy cultures for everybody, so that they can be healthy physically and mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often miss that intersectionality. You know, if a person is, black or brown, we just see them as that rather than anything else as well. You know. And I think you're so right about being able to. I think sometimes we, not fault of anyone or our own, sometimes don't have that self-awareness to recognise when we're feeling a certain way, or we're so good at kind of masking it, especially as women. You know, I know certainly from my background of being Indian female and from the LGBTQ background as well, community, I could hide one of those things for sure really well, but that didn't play very well on my mental health or my well-being. So, and I think to myself now, I'm good, I can handle it, but I do feel that I suppress anxiety a bit. You know, I can't seem to get my head around how to manage it, in the best way, but I can feel my body not feeling good, or my blood pressure being high, or whatever it is. And so it's always kind of there. But what I love what you said is that then it's like about changing your environment you're in. What's making you feel anxious and stressed, and how can that environment be changed for you as well? And I think that there's, like the way that the work culture is I think there's so much work to be done still, even though things are improving. What do you think are the main kind of issues around the workplace currently?
I think it's the approach, to DEI. I think a lot of the time people feel if you recruit a diverse workforce, that's enough to change the culture. It's not. It's about attitudes, it's about behaviour, it's about language, it's about the systems, the inequitable systems. And it's really about understanding what people are bringing into the workplace, because we don't leave our colour at the door. We don't leave our sexual identity at the door. We don't leave our ability or disability at the door. That's who we are. And so organisations need to be able to truly support that. And it's not enough to say, bring your authentic self to work, bring your full self to work, if it's not a psychologically safe place. It's a contradiction in terms to me. So often I feel that people, they pick up what is the latest buzzword, but the reality is not played out, because actually the change is ongoing, it's fundamental, and it's radical. And so often people tend to have the tick box exercise by having maybe a unconscious bias training. We haven't said recruiting more people from diverse backgrounds, having a coach come in and offer coaching, or having a gym membership. This isn't enough.
No,
really
absolutely.
Isn't. And if you really are committed and serious about making change, then we need to look at a more fundamental change in terms of diverse mental health.
Absolutely. And so how can companies implement psychological safety, for example, and be aware of diverse mental health? And what can companies do? What's the ideal situation look like in a company, do you feel?
Yeah. I think in terms of psychological safety, so when we talk about psychological safety, it's about being non-judgmental about people's experience and mental health. and about making it safe so that they can share and that they won't be penalised or punished. That's easier said than done.
Yes.
Because we're talking about people changing their beliefs and their attitudes, their language and their behaviour and their feelings. And so that inner work needs to be understood. And so it's important then to work with professionals who understand that process and can work with managers, leaders and employees to start that journey. And to look at what are the type of policies, what is the nature of their culture that works really well and makes people feel safe. What's the nature of their culture that could be changed and transformed? And what is the path that they can plot in order to work on that and take their people with them?
Yes.
And that will also invite people in a safe place. And so it's not easy. And I think as humans, we're saying how people, they like things to be easy and simple.
Very true.
And quick. They want to take shortcuts.
It's so true. And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you know, it's that deep work, like you said, as well. In your work that you've done with organisations, are there any, obviously naming no companies, but have you seen any success, and what does that success look like? You know, in diverse mental health in organisations? I think in terms of diverse mental health, I think it's a new concept that people are not so clear on, because it's a concept that I've developed myself. Amazing.
And wanting to try to really help people understand what that's about. And they often talk about well-being and DEI. Diverse mental health isn't well-being or mental health plus DEI. It's really about understanding the connection, the interrelationship, the intersectionality that we were talking about, how that affects somebody's identity, and how the interreaction within their environment and the workplace and culture play a part. And so for me, my work is about helping people break that down, to understand what are the different components, what that means, how it plays out, what their role is in that, what the company's role is in that, what the individual's role is in that. How can they work together to have a good, positive, healthy understanding? And then how can they move forward in creating that positive culture? And that is, as I said, it's an ongoing journey. And
it really is.
Some people are open to that. And some people say it's too radical a change. We have to change too much. But that's what it takes.
But it's even radical. Like, it's just taking care of people on a human-to-human basis, right? Because all you ever worry about is profits and margin and, you know, getting the best, which is fair enough. That is part of business. But really, you know, I certainly know, after working in tech for 20 years, that was never taken care of.
Yeah.
There's no way, you know, like, and you never felt supported in that way. That's why you might have workmates you could talk to about stuff going on. But really bad behaviour used to be ignored back in the day as well. And, you know, like, and toxic behaviour. And what you realise is that, you know, that change comes from the top of that organisation first, doesn't it? If they're not willing to make that change, then how's that change going to be implemented throughout that organisation?
Yeah.
You know, so is there resistance generally from the top of the organisation to kind of make that change?
I think there is resistance because of the way that we've been socialised and our belief systems. So we're fighting against isms, sexism, racism, ableism, homophobia, and all of the isms. We're also fighting against discrimination and inequity that has been around for a very, very long time. So changing those structures, there is resistance because people feel that they will lose out and they don't want to change the status quo. They want it to continue as it is. And some people actually don't recognise or feel that it needs to change. It's fine, you know, it's fine the way it is. And so it also relates to what you were saying, the bottom line. How is it going to profit us? We're about profits and productivity and being successful. And so people need to see, and businesses need to see, that there's something in it for them as well. Absolutely. And so it's really been a challenge to help people understand, exactly as you were saying, that it's important about supporting us as human beings, because in that, when we're happier, we're healthier, we're more focused, we're more productive, and the statistics prove that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
The investment in that over the long term does us all better, businesses and individuals.
Yeah. And what benefits is that, like in sort of layman's terms, like what benefits can business see if they start doing this work?
Yeah, a huge benefits in terms of less sickness, less absence, less absenteeism, because people will be present. They'll be healthy. They won't suffer so many illnesses, physical or mental, and they'll be able to perform at a much higher rate. So their performance will be higher, their productivity will be higher, and also relationships will be better. It will reduce conflicts in the workplace. It will help with communication. It will help with business partners and clients and customers, because you're understanding what's going on with them, and you're acknowledging their needs and their experience, and then you're reacting to it. And it really does play out in terms of people being more fulfilled, having better job satisfaction, and having better engagement and retention, less turnover. And all of
it's interesting
for businesses.
They really are, aren't they? And why wouldn't you want that? Because it's ultimately going to, improve the bottom line and be, it will make your organisation more successful and your people happier as well at the same time. And to be honest, I've heard and seen as well for good type companies that also have quite toxic work environments.
Yeah.
There might be companies out there that deal in mental health or, whatever it is, but the leadership is, it's quite toxic, or the culture is quite toxic. And it blows my mind that you're trying to do good for other people, but yet your internal processes, your internal people aren't good. And that's, I don't understand, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like it just really confuses me why this happens still, How can people be educated in this side of things? Like, what needs to be done, do you think, for this to, like, it feels like there's more of you needed in the world. Let's put it that way. It feels like there's no more Carolines needed to help this change.
But
it's, how, if I go back to what you were saying before, so people need to recognise also their own, mental health and well-being issues and stuff as well, especially around anxiety and depression and burnout. I guess the question around that was, which I missed, I apologise for that, was how do they recognise this? How do they see it within themselves? How do they start being more self-aware of what they're sort of dealing with, so they can take it to their employer?
Yeah. I think it very much relates to building your own self-awareness and being self-reflective. And so there are lots of strategies that people can develop that helps build their self-awareness. Mindfulness is a great one for that. Mindfulness is about being in the moment. It's about taking that time, focusing on your breath, and really reflecting on your physical and mental state and well-being. And keeping things such as journals can be very helpful as well, because it helps you not only express and share and order your thoughts, feelings and experiences, it helps you to reflect on them. It helps you to identify patterns and for you to enact change. And also, of course, counselling. I think that just as everybody has a GP, general practitioner, everybody should have a psychotherapist. It should be
100%.
That's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
And I think that reflective process with a counsellor or a psychotherapist or a coach can be really helpful in developing our awareness and understanding. And really just taking time out to recognise the warning signs for people to learn about their own mental health and physical health, and to look at the signs and not to ignore them, because we tend to do that in the society that we live in. It encourages us to ignore that and just to keep going.
Just don't get it. Why? I just don't understand why we do that. I guess, I think that maybe perhaps GPs are getting a bit better and in terms of being more holistic, but they're so busy, like the NHS is so busy, GPs are so busy, they just need to get through the patient load as well, But I completely agree that, extra funding, extra support is needed, right, to have a counsellor or a psychotherapist to help you through, your issues and stuff as well. But yeah, I guess it's a really big question. I don't expect it to be answered, honestly, but it's just something which I think about sometimes is it because we're human beings? Is that why we suffer mental health issues? Or is it how we're raised? Or is it biological? Like is it, are we born into a family and they determine, our mental health and well-being and the experience that we have? Or it seems like it's just a whole mixture of stuff.
Yeah.
Will it be this way forever? Will we have to deal with, will it get worse, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about how we conceptualize mental health, because mental health isn't an entity in itself. It's part of who and how we exist. It's part of human nature and human existence. And so when we understand that and accept that, it's about then how do we then nurture that? Just as we nurture and take care of our physical health and our physical body, we have to do that with our mental health. But they're actually interconnected, and it's very hard to speak of it as a holistic system, because it is. Because of the duality of our language, we separate, so we talk about mind and body. So it's really hard for me even now. I trained as an existential psychotherapist, which doesn't actually talk about the duality, it talks about the holistic approach, and about how it's so important as human beings to think about what are the things that we develop within our structures and society, our beliefs, our behaviour, our attitudes that cause harm, and what are the structures and the attitudes and behaviours that make us healthy and supportive, and then how can we invest in that? And that has to start from a very, very early age as well. And it needs
the school age maybe as well, with schooling, right, and education.
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, again, there's the archaic curriculum that we have in schools and not being able to kind of deal with that side of things as well. I think it's a lot of change to be had, I think, for that. But it is a big question, isn't it, really? It does worry me, I suppose, about, do you feel like it's getting worse before it gets better? Do you think there's more awareness in the world that we can actually, put more resources onto this and onto diverse mental health and well-being?
Yeah, I think we have to invest more. We have to recognise the importance of our mental health. We're actually suffering from a mental health crisis, and it's really because we've neglected it for far too long and had the focus on physical health. And I think because of the challenges that we face in the world today, particularly for young people, coupled with the fact that the lack of resources and support, it makes it even more challenging and difficult. And so people are experiencing more mental health problems and poorer mental health. And the people who have mental health problems and they are looking to move past that and to grow, their problems are being exacerbated and made worse. And so it's really important that we recognise and acknowledge that that is our reality. And that we need to be doing a lot more than we are now. And that's on a government, institutional, local, national, individual level. Because we all have responsibility for the cultures that we create and how we can support healthy development and unhealthy development.
Indeed, I completely agree. And, it's like you said, it needs to take a more of a holistic approach of being able to, for yourself, to be aware of your own issues, to get the help that you support that you need, to have those sort of self strategies, but also have your workplace. You spend 8 hours of work a day, right? To have your workplace also understand these things so they can support you. And it's just this whole system, isn't it, which I feel like isn't connected at the moment, But I know your wonderful organisation is trying to, fix that and try to make companies aware. Tell me more about your wonderful company and what your hopes and aspirations are for the future.
Yeah. I mean, for diverse mental health, for me, I feel that it is the next level for understanding our mental health and well-being, because we have to understand our lived experience as part of how it impacts our mental health. Yes. And that we exist as human beings in our intersectionality of our identities and our experience. And so for me, the work that I'm doing and the organisation that I'm building is about developing, training, coaching resources and support networks that can make that a reality for everybody. Developing a network that is truly inclusive and diverse, that is accessible for everybody, that doesn't separate people into separate identities or chop up their particular problems or their physical abilities, but brings them all together in a truly a holistic, comprehensive way where we can develop clear strategies in how we can help people fully grow in all of their beautiful identities. And so for me, it's really about working with organizations and leadership to help them plot that, to help them understand, grow their awareness about diverse mental health issues, what causes that, what their role is, what kind of strategies they can develop, what kind of resources they can use, and how they can build really healthy, diverse cultures that support people.
It feels like it's, a wonderful and inspirational program to have. And I think that I really want to urge people to contact you and, really talk to you about this. How can they get in touch with you if they're interested in bringing this into their organizations? How can they contact you and get more information?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so they can connect with me. They can send me a direct message on LinkedIn. And my website is www.freechoices.co.uk, or they can send me an email at caroline@freechoices.co.uk. So I'm happy to share resources, experience, and to tell people more about the diverse mental health approach, and just to get it out there and to help people develop that, because I think that is the future of mental health.
Absolutely. It's so important. And I love that you're being the thought leader in this area as well, and taking it forwards with such, with such force and determination, inspiration and aspiration as well, for companies to change this. And I think it's much needed. I always ask this question before I close an episode, but I'd like to ask you this. How do you find the power within you to manage your own mental health now and for the future?
I think that it's my drive and my passion that's always been my fire to understand people and to help people. I've always been somebody who's wanted to support others, and that's been deeply ingrained. And my mother was a great inspiration and role model, because she's one of the most inspirational, strongest, supportive and intelligent people that I've met, and she's been really, really supportive. And I think that also what I've found is that I've had my own mental health struggles and difficulties, and I've learned from that. And I think that it's really important that we don't neglect or ignore the warning signs, that we don't try to be what we're not, and that we set our boundaries, and that we invest in self-care. And so through that, it's really been able to keep me on a clear path to what I truly believe in. And I love what I do. I strongly believe in what I do. And it's a bit like a mission that I'm on, to take as many people along that road as possible.
And that is the most beautiful journey that you can do, right? Like, you're just adding value and changing people's lives and organizations. And I think that's just so inspirational. And, I urge anyone to get in touch with Caroline as well. Please do kind of talk about how she can help your organization, because I think diverse mental health is needed to be talked about, and also strategies to kind of deal with that implemented as well ASAP. So Caroline, thank you for such a wonderful conversation with me.
Thank you. It's been absolutely great speaking to you, because I was a bit nervous because you said, I'm not going to let you know any questions beforehand. We're just going to have a natural discussion. And you've got a wide range of experience. We can talk about mental health. I'm thinking, you're not going to get me to stop talking. I'm just going to talk.
I have a feeling this conversation is going to go on beyond this podcast as well, because you are a wonderful human being. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.